You're just too much drama. Stay away from the wedding. That's the text that flipped a switch in me. A single sentence, after months of bending over backward to help her, and suddenly I was nothing more than a nuisance, a liability. It's funny how years of resentment and tiny slights can pile up so neatly behind one message, like dominoes you didn't know you'd been setting up. And when that first one falls, the whole structure comes down fast. My name's Marcus, I'm 34, and if you asked anyone in my family 2 months ago, I was the responsible one. The fixer. The one who always showed up. And yet, somehow, that also made me the easiest one to walk over. Let me rewind. I don't want to get ahead of myself. This isn't just a story about a wedding gone wrong. It's about decades of imbalance finally boiling over. About what happens when you stop playing the role your family expects of you and start playing the one they fear. I'm the oldest of 3. My sister Alyssa is 29, and our youngest brother, Liam, is 26. Our parents are still together, still living in the same 2-story house in upstate New York that we all grew up in, and still pretending like everything's picture perfect when it's anything but. We weren't a dysfunctional family in the loud, obvious way. No plates flying across the room. No yelling matches. Just a quiet imbalance, like a table with one short leg that nobody bothered to fix, so someone had to keep their foot under it all the time to keep things steady. That someone was me. Alyssa was always the golden child. From the time we were little, it was clear she could do no wrong. Late to school? Must have been the bus. Failed a class? The teacher must have had it out for her. Got caught sneaking out. She's just expressing herself. Marcus, don't be so uptight. Meanwhile, I was the kid who was expected to have straight A's, make curfew, and keep things calm. I was the one they leaned on when bills were tight, or when mom had her back issues and couldn't cook. I used to think that's just what older siblings did, until I grew up and realized Alyssa wasn't pulling any weight at all. Things really started to go sideways about 6 months ago when Alyssa got engaged to her boyfriend, Jordan. Now, to be fair, Jordan's not a bad guy. He's quiet, kind of soft-spoken, works in IT. We've had a few beers together, and I genuinely think he cares about her. But I also think he's completely blind to the version of Alyssa he's marrying. The curated version, all soft smiles and Pinterest boards. Not the one who hasn't held a stable job in 3 years, or who treats anyone who challenges her like an enemy. Anyway, as soon as the engagement happened, the family chat lit up. Alyssa was beaming, mom was crying emoji tears, dad was asking about venue ideas, and I, stupidly, offered to help. I didn't even think twice. That's the thing about being the dependable one. You offer help before people even ask, and you don't expect much thanks. It's just what you do. I knew our parents didn't have much saved, and Alyssa had champagne tastes on a boxed wine budget. So I said I could contribute a few things to get the planning rolling. A gesture. Nothing huge. Except a few things turned into a lot of things. First, it was the deposit on the venue. A small but beautiful lakeside lodge that cost $3,000 to reserve. Alyssa called me crying because they'd lost their preferred date while trying to pull together funds. I stepped in. No biggie. I wired the deposit directly to the lodge and put the reservation in her name. Then it was the dress. She had her heart set on this boutique gown that, I'll admit, looked stunning on her. I went with her to the fitting, watched her twirl in front of the mirror, watched mom dab her eyes with a tissue like they were filming a Hallmark movie. The price tag? $1,750. And again, they were just short that month. Jordan's work bonus hadn't come in. Dad's retirement check was late. Whatever. I paid. She promised she'd pay me back after the wedding gifts come in. That was the first red flag. You know what's wild? I didn't even feel used at the time. I felt included. Like maybe, just maybe, this would be one of those rare family milestones where I didn't have to be the outsider looking in, nodding politely from the sidelines. Alyssa started sending me links to caterers, playlists, even asked if I could help pick the centerpiece designs. It felt good, like I mattered, until it didn't. About 3 weeks ago, I noticed a shift. Alyssa started going radio silent in our group chat. She stopped answering my texts. When I'd call, she'd either send me straight to voicemail or answer with this clipped, distracted tone, like I was annoying her. I chalked it up to wedding stress. I figured she was overwhelmed. But then Liam, who, let's be honest, is allergic to effort, told me she'd invited him and his girlfriend to her bridal shower, but not me. He showed me the evite. My name wasn't on it. That stung. I tried to brush it off. I texted her something light, jokingly asked if my invite got lost in the spam folder. No response. I asked again a few days later. Nothing. Then Mom called and asked if I'd be available to help shuttle some of the gifts from the shower to Alyssa's apartment afterward. I nearly dropped the phone. Wait, I said. She didn't even invite me. Mom paused. Oh, well, I'm sure she just thought it might be awkward with some of her friends there. You know how things can get. You're always so blunt, Marcus. Blunt. That's what they call it when you don't tolerate nonsense. I bit my tongue and agreed to help anyway. That's how deeply wired my fixer reflex goes. Even when I'm not invited, I show up. I loaded my SUV with boxes of gifts for a party I wasn't welcome at and drove them to her place in silence. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. The final straw came last week. I texted her a quick update that the DJ had confirmed the date and I'd sent in the deposit. I'd offered to help book vendors early on, and she'd sent me her top picks. I'd already paid the photographer's retainer, $800, and reserved the decorator and lighting team. She hadn't even said thank you, but I assumed she was just busy. Then came the text. Out of nowhere. No context. No greeting. You're just too much drama. Stay away from the wedding. That was it. No punctuation. No explanation. Like she was flicking me off her shoulder like lint. At first, I stared at the screen, wondering if she meant to send that to someone else. I read it 3 times. My stomach dropped. I felt this hot, angry pressure building in my chest. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. A line had been crossed. It wasn't just about the text. It was everything behind it. The years of being taken for granted. The casual dismissal. The quiet, seething disrespect dressed up as wedding stress. I sat in my apartment, the silence thick around me, thinking, you know what? Fine. Fine. If I'm too much drama to be at your wedding, maybe I'm too much to pay for it, too. And that's when I made a decision. A quiet, surgical decision. No rage. No outbursts. Just clarity. The revenge part? Oh, it's coming. But first, I had to make some calls. And 3 days later, she showed up on my porch, mascara streaked, hair a mess, clutching her phone like it had betrayed her, screaming my name loud enough for the neighbors to hear. And that's when the entire family finally took my side. But I'll get there. Let me tell you what happened in the hours leading up to that knock on my door. I didn't sleep the night after that text. Not really, anyway. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone glowing dim beside me, replaying her words over and over. You're just too much drama. Stay away from the wedding. Every time I closed my eyes, a new memory surfaced. Small moments I'd shrugged off before that now burned in my chest like coals. Her borrowing my car and returning it with an empty tank. Her forgetting to pay me back for rent the time she crashed on my couch for 3 months. Her rolling her eyes at me at family dinners when I brought up something too serious. All of it built this invisible mountain, and now I was finally staring at the summit. I didn't text her back. I didn't call. I didn't need a fight. I needed peace. But before I could fully process what had just happened, I started getting calls from the vendors. At first, I thought maybe it was just confirmation stuff. The florist, the decorator, the lighting guy, all reaching out. But no, they were calling because Alyssa had called them, asking to make changes, demanding to be the main point of contact, and asking about remaining balances. Except, of course, I had been the one who paid most of them. In full. The florist sounded confused. She said you were just helping out, and that she'd handle things from here. But since your name's on the contract, I just wanted to double-check before we make changes. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there frozen. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just cutting me out of the wedding emotionally. She was trying to take over everything I had already paid for and claim it as her own. That was the real betrayal. The text was just a symptom. The disease ran deeper. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a bridezilla moment. This was calculated. She wanted the money, not the relationship. And the worst part? My parents were backing her. I found out a day later when I dropped by their house to pick up some mail I still had sent there. Mom met me at the door like she always did. Tight smile, glass of white wine in hand even though it was barely noon. She waved me in and acted like everything was normal, which made my skin crawl. I asked where Dad was, and she said he was out picking up some things for Alyssa's welcome bags. I blinked. Welcome bags? What welcome bags? For the wedding guests, she said lightly, sipping. You know, the little hotel favors. She's doing candles, mini champagne bottles, the works. She can afford that. Mom paused. Just for a second. A flicker of something, guilt, passed over her face. Well, we're helping. It's her big day. I couldn't believe it. They were throwing more money at her after everything? After she uninvited me from her own wedding and told me I was too much drama? I set the mail down and turned to leave. I didn't trust myself to speak. But just as I reached the door, Mom said something that made me stop in my tracks. She told me you threatened to ruin her wedding. I turned. Slowly. What? She said you were upset about not being the center of attention and were trying to sabotage things. She was crying. Marcus. I've never seen her so hurt. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room spun. It was like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. She lied to you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom didn't reply, just looked away. That was the moment. The breaking point. The part of the movie where the music cuts out and the camera zooms in on the main character's face as they realize, this isn't salvageable. My own mother believed her over me. After everything, I left without another word. Got in my car, drove home, and sat in the driveway with my hands on the steering wheel for a full 10 minutes before I moved. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and started making a list. Every vendor I had booked, every deposit I had paid, every contract that had my name on it. I pulled up email receipts, text confirmations, payment logs. It was all there. The florist, the venue, the lighting, the decorator, the DJ, the photographer. I had the receipts, the dates, the amounts. Most of it was booked under my name, not hers. I had offered to help. She never once asked me to transfer ownership or make her the point of contact. So I started making calls, one by one. I didn't yell. I didn't rant. I just told them, calmly and clearly, that I was canceling all bookings made under my name. Personal emergency. Needed to revoke the reservations. Most were understanding. Some were disappointed. A few asked if I was sure. I was. The venue was the biggest one. $3,000 deposit, non-refundable unless canceled more than 30 days in advance, and we were just inside that window. I canceled. Got confirmation in writing. The refund would be processed within 5 business days, back to my card. And then, because I'm thorough, I forwarded the cancellation notice to Alyssa. No subject line. No message. Just the cancellation attached. 15 minutes later, she called. I let it ring. She called again. Then she texted, WTF is this? Why would you do this? I didn't reply. Then the messages started coming in rapid fire. This is so petty. You're literally ruining my life. Jordan's parents already booked flights. You've always been jealous of me. Admit it. If you don't fix this, I swear to God. I blocked her. Then, like clockwork, Mom called. I let that one go to voicemail too. The message was long, emotional, and full of words like disappointed and shocked and ungrateful. Unbelievable. I had paid thousands of dollars for a wedding I was now not invited to. And somehow I was the villain? I thought that would be the end of it. That they'd all just rage text themselves to exhaustion and move on. I figured I could reclaim my peace and let them sort it out. But I had underestimated how much power I had just pulled out from under Alyssa. 3 days later, it was a Sunday. I remember because I had just settled in with a bowl of leftover Thai and was halfway through a rewatch of The Americans. There was a knock at my door. Loud. Sharp. The kind that said this isn't Amazon. I muted the TV, stood slowly, and looked through the peephole. It was her. Alyssa. Hair in a messy bun. Eyes wild. Phone clutched in one hand, the other balled into a fist. I didn't open the door. I just watched. She knocked again, harder. Then again. Then started yelling my name. Screaming it, actually. I could hear the hysteria in her voice. You can't do this. You can't. Open the door. We have guests coming. I sent the invites. I backed away. Not out of fear, out of disgust. She kept going, ranting about how I had ruined everything, how I was sick in the head, how Mom and Dad were on her side, and I'd regret this. Her voice cracked. At one point, I think she tried to call Jordan on speaker, yelling something about, tell him what you said, but he must not have picked up. The neighbors peeked out. I saw old Mrs. Keene across the street pulling her curtains back just enough to witness the show. A man walking his dog slowed to watch, and I just stood inside, silent, still, detached. This wasn't my mess anymore. Eventually, Alyssa's voice gave out. She banged on the door one last time, cursed under her breath, and stormed back to her car. I didn't move for a long time. Later that evening, Liam texted me. Just 3 words. I heard everything. I stared at that message for a while. Then another came in. I'm not picking sides, but you're not crazy. It was the closest thing to validation I'd gotten in weeks. But the real shift happened a few days after that, when my dad, who rarely gets involved in drama and almost never texts me first, sent me a message. We need to talk. Because, you see, Alyssa's meltdown on my porch had made more than just noise. It had exposed every lie she'd told. And for the first time in my life, my family started to see the truth. But not all of them were ready to face it. Not yet. Not until she did something even worse. Something that finally made my mom call me in tears. And that's when things got serious. They say rock bottom isn't a moment. It's a slow realization. Like falling into cold water and not noticing how deep you've sunk until you look up and can't see the surface. That's exactly what the week after Alyssa's porch meltdown felt like. It was like I had dropped out of my own family. No group chat updates. No texts from mom. Not even her daily forwards of inspirational quotes or those unfunny minion memes she thought were hilarious. Dad didn't follow up on the "we need to talk" message. Alyssa went dark on all platforms. And while part of me should have felt relieved, finally, the chaos quieted. It hit harder than I expected. Because despite everything, they were still my family. And for the first time in 34 years, I was completely on the outside looking in. The silence was loud. At work, I smiled on Zoom calls. Hit deadlines. Cracked dry jokes in the team chat like nothing was wrong. But I started staying late just to avoid the quiet of my apartment. I'd take the long way home, grab dinner from whatever 24-hour spot didn't ask questions, and then sit in the parking lot eating in my car like a ghost of myself. The worst part? I kept checking my phone. Even after blocking Alyssa, even after ignoring mom's voicemail, even after Liam said I wasn't crazy, I kept checking, hoping someone, anyone, would reach out with something real. Not a guilt trip. Not another accusation. Just an acknowledgement. A thanks, maybe. But nothing came. I stopped going to family dinners. Didn't show up for Jordan's surprise bachelor barbecue. Yet, apparently that still happened. I knew about it only because Liam sent me a picture of a folding table covered in beer cans and burgers, with a message that said, "He's barely talking to her." I didn't reply. I just stared at the photo. Jordan looked miserable. Alyssa wasn't even in the frame. That's when I realized something important. Her wedding had become my personal crucifixion, and she was willing to light the match herself, as long as it meant the spotlight stayed on her. And for what? Money? Control? Pride? I started asking myself that question every day, and the more I sat with it, the more a new thought began to form. What if this wasn't my downfall? What if this was my beginning? It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't some grand aha moment with a sunrise and motivational soundtrack. It was smaller than that. Quieter. More real. It started when I finally cleaned my apartment. Not just wiped the counters or folded some laundry. I deep cleaned. Tossed boxes of stuff I'd been clinging to just in case. Reorganized every drawer. Vacuumed behind the couch. Found an old shoebox full of photos I hadn't looked at in years. Me at 20 with friends I'd lost touch with. A younger Liam in a Halloween costume. Even a rare one of Alyssa and me as kids, playing cards on the living room floor. I stared at that last one for a long time. We looked happy. Or maybe we just looked unaware. Kids always do. That same day, I finally transferred $5,000 back into my savings from the wedding refund. It felt symbolic. Like I had just reclaimed a piece of myself. That night, I opened a notebook and started writing. Not journaling. Not venting. Just thinking out loud on paper. Ideas I had shelved for years. Dreams I never thought I had time for. One of them stood out. I'd always wanted to start a small side hustle. Something with purpose, something mine. For years I'd helped everyone else build their dreams. What if I finally built one for myself? I didn't go big right away. I'm not that kind of guy. No, quit your job and move to Bali nonsense. I just started small. I'd always been good with tech, fixing gadgets, setting up home networks, troubleshooting smart devices. Friends used to joke I was best buy in a hoodie. So I set up a simple site. Offered affordable tech help in my area. Made a few flyers. Posted on local Facebook groups. I expected nothing. I got 3 clients in the first week. One was a sweet older woman who needed help resetting her Wi-Fi password. Another was a single mom who couldn't get her printer to work for her kid's school project. The third? A local cafe owner whose POS system kept crashing. I spent 2 hours there fixing it, and when I was done, he gave me a free meal and told me, You're a lifesaver. I've had 2 pros come in and mess it up worse. You actually listened. That hit me harder than I expected. You actually listened. Maybe that was the thing no one in my family ever bothered to say. They always used me, needed me, expected me, but they never listened. The more I worked with real people, strangers who had no stake in me, no baggage, the more I started to feel seen. Not as the responsible brother or the fix-it son. Just Marcus, a guy who was good at solving problems and didn't expect anything in return except decency. The side hustle grew. By the end of the month, I had a dozen regulars. I set up an LLC, built a proper booking system, started getting reviews. One of the cafe regulars offered to redesign my logo for free after I fixed her tablet. Another client referred me to her church group. Suddenly, I was doing group workshops on Basic Tech 101. And the weirdest part? I was happy. Not the flashy kind of happy. Not the Instagram quote kind. Just steady, grounding contentment. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped waiting. But the universe, as always, has a strange sense of timing. It was a Tuesday when the call came. I had just finished helping a local bookstore set up their online ordering system. They gave me a box of used thrillers as thanks, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Hello. It was my mom, and she was crying. Really crying. Not the performative sniffles I'd grown used to. Her voice was raw, shaky, like she'd been holding back a dam that had finally cracked. Marcus, she said. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. I just listened. She went on to explain what had happened. How Alyssa had completely unraveled after the porch incident. How she'd told the entire family I had stolen the venue money, spun lies about me blackmailing her, even accused me of sabotaging her relationship with Jordan. But it backfired. Because Jordan? He had finally had enough. He confronted her, asked for receipts, proof, a single shred of evidence that backed up her stories. She had none. When she realized the lies were collapsing, she doubled down. Said I'd always been obsessed with control, that I hated her, that I was trying to ruin her out of jealousy. Jordan walked out 2 weeks before the wedding, called off the whole thing. He told my parents, flat out, that he couldn't marry someone so dishonest. And that was when the family finally saw the truth. Not because they believed me, but because Alyssa's mask slipped in front of someone else. That's the part that hurt the most. They didn't defend me when I told them. They defended me when it was socially embarrassing not to. Mom admitted she didn't know how to make things right. She said Dad was ashamed. That Liam was furious. That Alyssa was staying at a friend's place and refusing to talk to anyone. I don't expect you to forgive us, she said. But we see it now, and we're sorry. I sat on the edge of my bed in silence, holding the phone to my ear, the city sounds leaking in through the window. And I realized something. This wasn't an apology to heal me. It was a confession to unburden them. So I told her the truth. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I'm not coming back, either. Because by then, I'd already started building something better. Not just a business. A life. And I wasn't going to burn it down just because the people who once left me in the cold decided they finally wanted to come inside. That was the fall. And this was the rise. But of course, Alyssa wasn't done. Because when she found out Jordan canceled everything, she went nuclear. And that's when she made a move so desperate, so manipulative, it nearly cost me everything I'd built. You'd think the story would have ended with her wedding getting canceled. That should have been the natural consequence, right? Lie, manipulate, use people, and eventually the truth catches up with you. Her fiancé walks away. The venue's gone. Vendors pulled out. Family starts seeing through the smoke. But not Alyssa. She didn't crawl away humbled. She didn't apologize. She didn't even go quiet. She doubled down. The first sign of it came 3 days after the call from Mom. I was in the middle of setting up a mesh Wi-Fi system for an elderly couple, super sweet folks who paid me in lemon bars and a check, when I got an email notification from PayPal. Dispute opened. Unauthorized charge for wedding vendor services. I stared at the screen. The name on the complaint? Alyssa. My stomach dropped. I checked the attached invoice. It was the retainer I'd paid the DJ, the same DJ I had canceled weeks ago and gotten refunded for. She had gone back, pulled one of the few payments I had routed through her email for confirmation, and tried to reverse it by claiming I had fraudulently used her account. Unreal. And that was just the beginning. By the time I got home, I had 3 more disputes pending. 1 through Zelle, 1 through Venmo. One from a floral boutique that had already refunded me directly but apparently had been contacted again by Alyssa, demanding they verify ownership of the transaction. She was trying to claw back money I'd already reclaimed. It was a digital revenge, messy, frantic, and entirely malicious. She wasn't trying to get her money back. She didn't even care about the vendors. She just wanted to ruin me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't panic. I documented everything. Screenshots, receipts, text messages, voicemails. Even the florist's cancellation email, which had her name clearly nowhere on it. I wrote a calm, detailed response to every dispute. I uploaded the proof. I kept it professional, because I'd learned something over the last month. The more chaotic someone gets, the more power you have by staying calm. Still, something gnawed at me. This wasn't her usual tantrum. This wasn't about attention. This was surgical. She was targeting my business, my finances, my stability. And it wasn't working, but it was clear she had more in her pocket. I didn't want to wait and find out what it was. So I decided to prepare. I spent the next few days fortifying everything. Switched my business banking to a new institution. Upgraded all my passwords to randomized vault-protected logins. Set up two-factor authentication on every single account. Moved all my vendor and client comms to encrypted platforms and added e-signature contracts across the board. I even hired a lawyer. Well, not a full-time lawyer, but a referral from a friend led me to a sharp, no-nonsense solo attorney named Erica who specialized in small business and digital fraud. I gave her everything. She read through it all and said, "She's got no case. But if she escalates this, you'll want to be ready." I asked her what escalates looked like. She said, "It means she stops playing games with apps and starts trying to ruin your name." I thought that was paranoia, until Liam called the next morning. "Hey, bro, I think you need to know something." I was eating breakfast, half awake. "What's up?" She posted on Facebook. That woke me up. Posted what? He hesitated. Then read it aloud. My own brother sabotaged my wedding out of jealousy. He canceled everything behind my back, then stole the money. He's emotionally unstable and has a history of manipulation. I'm done protecting him. If anyone's considering hiring his business, just know who you're dealing with. My heart sank. I pulled up Facebook. She had me blocked, but Liam sent screenshots. There it was. A long, dramatic post with tears and emojis and all the emotional bait she was famous for. Dozens of comments. Cousins chiming in. A few praying for you messages. Even a former coworker of mine asked, "Wait, is this true?" And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just throwing a fit. She was trying to poison the well. This wasn't about money. It was about reputation. Because I had taken something from her. Not the wedding, not the vendors, not the money, but control. I had stopped playing the older brother who cleaned up her messes, and now she was punishing me for stepping out of line. But here's the thing. She picked the wrong moment. Because I wasn't the same guy who paid her venue deposit out of guilt. I was done fixing things for people who'd rather set fire to my life than say thank you. And I wasn't going to sit back and hope the flames died down. I was going to fight back. But not the way she expected. No screaming matches. No comment wars. No vague posts. I was going to hit her where it hurt most. Credibility. I made a new website page. A transparency section, laying out my policies, refund records, vendor agreements, with anonymized proof. No names, just dates and receipts. I wrote a public statement on my business socials, brief but calm. Recent personal attacks have surfaced regarding my involvement in a canceled wedding. While I typically don't respond to private matters publicly, I take integrity seriously. I've provided full refunds to all involved vendors and have legal documentation available should any claims arise. If you have concerns, I'm happy to speak directly and professionally. And then, I called in a few quiet favors. A client of mine happened to run a local events blog. I told her the situation, calmly, professionally. She offered to do a small write-up about tech support scams and vendor fraud from her angle, using my story as an example, with names changed. That article blew up locally. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. A few of the people who had commented on Alyssa's post went quiet. One even deleted their reply. A couple of mutuals reached out privately and said, "Hey, just wanted to say I read the blog. I'm sorry for assuming." It was subtle, quiet, but I could feel it. I was winning. And Alyssa? She was unraveling. Liam texted me again, this time with a screenshot from her Instagram story. It's so funny how narcissists pretend to be calm while they destroy everything around them. Stay away from people who make you question your reality. Classic. When the truth doesn't fit your story, just rewrite the character. But I didn't engage, because I was already moving on to the next phase. See, while she was busy lobbing emotional grenades online, I had started speaking to someone even closer to her than she realized. Jordan. Yeah, her ex-fiancé. He reached out the day after the Facebook post went up. Said he didn't want to get involved at first, but now he was seeing the damage she was trying to do, and he wanted me to know I wasn't alone. I should have seen it sooner, he said. But she always made it sound like you were cold, controlling, that you never supported her. I didn't question it until she turned it on me. We talked for over an hour, and that's when he told me something that stopped me cold. He had recordings, not because he was spying, but because Alyssa had a habit of gaslighting people. So he started keeping voice memos of conversations to protect himself. Some of those recordings included her bragging about how she was going to spin everything to ruin me. One clip he sent me. Marcus thinks he's so clever. He'll pay for it all, and then I'll just cut him out. He won't do anything. He never does. Another. If he ever makes a scene, I'll just say he's mentally unstable. People believe women, especially brides. He doesn't stand a chance. I sat there, jaw slack, heart pounding. It was the proof I didn't even know I needed. Because now, I wasn't just some guy defending himself. I was the victim of premeditated defamation. I sent the clips to Erica. She was stunned. Said we had grounds not just to sue, but to formally pursue damages. Do you want to go nuclear? She asked. I didn't answer right away, because nuclear meant no going back. But then I thought about every time I picked Alyssa up from a party because she was too drunk to drive. Every lie she told that I covered for. Every time I paid her rent, covered her bills, fixed her broken laptop. Every time I made excuses for her, even when she turned on me. And I thought, no, she went nuclear first. All I'm doing now is building the fallout shelter and sending her the eviction notice. So yes, I told Erica, it's time. We started drafting a formal cease and desist for defamation, a claim for damages to my business, and a personal letter delivered to Alyssa's friend's house, since she was couch surfing now, with all the receipts. Every vendor, every payment, every lie, signed, sealed, and delivered. Because I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was setting the stage, and the final act was about to begin. Let me tell you, revenge doesn't always come in the form of a grand confrontation. It's not always fireworks or public shaming. Sometimes it's quiet, controlled, legal. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is watching someone unravel in the silence they created for themselves. The cease and desist letter landed like a hammer. I'll never forget the day it was delivered. I was at a client's apartment, helping her configure her smart thermostat when I got a single-line text from my lawyer, Erica. It's done. Timestamp delivery at 10:42 a.m. I didn't celebrate. Not outwardly. I nodded, thanked my client, and headed home. But the whole drive back, I had this low thrum of electricity in my chest. A strange combination of relief, anticipation, and something like sadness. Like the final page of a book you didn't expect to end this way. Because this was it. No more second chances. No more family politics. No more pretending this could be fixed with a group hug and a Thanksgiving dinner. I had drawn the line. By 2 p.m., my phone started lighting up again. Blocked numbers. Unknown senders. My email pinged twice. A message from Alyssa. The subject line, "Are you serious?" I didn't open it. Then a voicemail from Mom, her voice wobbling, begging me to just talk to your sister before this becomes a legal mess. Too late for that, because it was already a mess. Once she created, I had just finally stopped cleaning it up. But the real shift, the final domino, came from Jordan. Because after reviewing the letter and the recordings, Erica reached out to him formally and asked if he'd be willing to provide a sworn affidavit confirming the audio clips and backing the defamation claims. He didn't hesitate, and the moment Alyssa realized her ex-fiancé was now aligned with her ex-target, her entire world crumbled. Liam told me what happened next. I hadn't spoken to him much during the whole legal process, not out of anger, but just self-preservation. But once the letter hit and the family drama exploded into full view, he broke the silence. Apparently, Alyssa called an emergency family meeting, dragged my parents, Liam, and even an old aunt into the living room of our childhood home. She printed out screenshots of my business posts, of Jordan's statement, even the legal notice, and tried to frame it all as me attacking her. Liam said she was shaking, not from fear, from fury. She kept pacing, yelling about reputation damage, accusing Jordan of betrayal, claiming I had weaponized my status as the older brother to ruin her for attention. But this time, no one took her side. My dad, usually quiet, apparently stood up mid-rant and said, "Enough." Liam said the whole room went dead silent. Dad turned to Alyssa and said, "We believed you because we wanted to, because it was easier than seeing the truth. But Marcus warned us. He tried to tell us for years, and we failed him." Alyssa snapped, stormed out, slammed the door. She's always been good at exits, but not so good at accountability. The fallout came swiftly. My lawyer sent the formal settlement request, not for a massive amount, just enough to cover business damages, legal fees, and the emotional toll. $12,500. Reasonable, considering the potential consequences. Alyssa's friend, the one she'd been staying with, emailed my attorney directly. She wanted nothing to do with it anymore. Said Alyssa had been moody, explosive, and refused to take any responsibility. She quietly forwarded us several texts Alyssa had sent while the smear campaign was going on. They were cruel, targeted, proof of intent, more ammunition. At that point, Erica made a final offer. Pay the settlement within 30 days, delete all defamatory posts, and issue a formal apology, or we go to court. I expected her to drag it out. She didn't. She paid. It was probably Mom and Dad who fronted the money. I don't know. I didn't ask. It didn't matter. The point wasn't the cash, though, I'll admit, it felt like poetic closure. It was about the line in the sand. And she crossed it. The apology was short and insincere. A single line posted to Facebook, reading, "I said some things about my brother that weren't accurate. I apologize for any confusion caused." No admission of guilt. No remorse. Just public retreat. But it was enough. People saw it. The same ones who commented before. A few messaged me privately again. A former client who had been hesitant to rebook came back with a huge job, setting up a tech center for her nonprofit. I accepted. My business, if anything, grew from the whole ordeal. Because people respect resilience. They admire quiet strength more than loud drama. And over time, the noise faded. Alyssa moved out of state a month later. Said she needed a fresh start. I don't know where she went. I didn't ask. I haven't heard from her since. Mom and Dad still try to pretend things are normal. They invite me to dinners again. They ask how the business is going. I keep my answers polite, but short. Forgiveness is a process, not an obligation. Liam and I talk more now. He helps with the occasional client gig, and we've even grabbed drinks a few times. There's no awkwardness, just quiet understanding. He saw what she did, and he stayed neutral, yes, but he never lied for her. I respect that. And me? I'm good, really good. I upgraded my apartment. Brought on 2 part-time tech contractors to help with my growing client base. I even started mentoring local teens interested in IT. Every time I sit with them, I think about how different life could have been if someone taught me early on how to value myself. Because that's the real revenge. Not lawsuits. Not money. Not even the public humiliation of someone who deserved it. The real revenge is building a life so solid, so fulfilling, that the people who tried to break you can't even touch it anymore. The real revenge is peace. And now, when I walk into a quiet room, it doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like freedom. That's the story. That's how my sister tried to destroy my reputation and ended up losing her own. And that's how I, the so-called dramatic one, ended up with the last word. And I didn't even have to raise my voice.